On that basis, Labour will oppose this bill.
I call the honourable member Maggie Barry.
I rise to speak to the third reading of the Student Loan Amendment Bill with great pleasure. As a member of the Local Government and Environment Select Committee, I've heard some of the issues that other people in the committee have had against this bill, and I'd like to remind them that New Zealand has one of the most generous student loan schemes in the world, and while we want to keep it that way, we also need to ensure that students know what they're getting into when they take up a loan. If you have a loan, it is exactly that. It's something that you have to pay back. And I think that that's something that the opposition have often lost sight of. It is a loan, it is not a gift. So in an effort to make our very generous student loan scheme more sustainable and not to have to borrow more, as others would want to do, we need to be able to be pragmatic and to look at how to fund it as a nation. So we've introduced a number of performance criteria. They've been focused on targeting the money towards those who need it and are, importantly, prepared to pay it back, whether they go overseas or not. These are very fair and very reasonable changes. A lot has been made of this idea of having the reduction in the amount of time from 3 years to 1 year for overseas students repaying. I think that is fair and reasonable, and I utterly support it. But a lot of time has been spent on that. So let's look at some of the other changes that have been made. And the basic criteria for eligibility for the student loan has been tightened up in a number of ways, which I think make the scheme more sustainable and more fair. So requiring, for example, students to pass 50% of their courses over 2 years to continue borrowing. What is wrong with that? If you're a failed student, why should you continue to get money for something that you're just not actually delivering and performing on? I think limiting borrowing to 7 full-time studying years for undergraduate degrees is only fair. How long does it take to get a 3-year degree? If you're up there at 7 years, it may be okay for the other side of the House who think that they can stay on benefits and allowances for the rest of their adult lives. It's not actually the way for the future for this nation. It's unsustainable. We've also introduced administration fees. They cover more of the administration costs of the loan. So you borrow, you pay for it. It's not so bad as all of that.
Order.
And a voluntary repayment bonus, I think, is an excellent thing to do. I'm all in favour of people having a nominated person, and the previous speaker spoke of the fact that a parent might agree to let their child persuade them to being the person that can be contacted if the loan is in default, and that the parent might want to get out of that because these obligations may be onerous. I think that's a crock, frankly. I think that basically if you stand as somebody who is able to be a contact person for someone, you should do that. And let's face it, even the people on the other side of the chamber, if they were in default of their loans and had skived off and not bothered to pay them back, a call from the mother or the father or someone who they had actually put forward as a mentor, an auntie, could in fact be the spur that they need to do the right thing and be honest and actually repay the money that they need to pay, because that's what it comes down to, personal responsibility. Some, of course, on the other side of the House shirk that on every level. But Inland Revenue and StudyLink having access to a compulsory contact person is, I think, a very fair thing. It will counter the problems that have occurred when you're trying to trace these people. Inland Revenue holds overseas addresses for less than a quarter of the estimated 91,000 overseas-based borrowers. In addition to that, it also holds details for nominated people for some overseas borrowers. This is very fair. This is not an onerous responsibility. It's IRD getting in touch with you and saying, look, this person, we've lost contact with them, they've given us a fake address or they've moved on from there. We need to get in touch with them to remind them of their obligations. A loan is a loan, it's not a gift, and this is something that has been missed on a number of occasions from the questions that have been put when we've been in Select Committee. So I remind the people on the opposing side again that this is a very important thing, and a break from compulsory repayments is a privilege rather than a right. Todd McClay has spoken already about the statistics around this. The number of people who actually do not bother to pay back their loan is mostly the overseas borrowers. 50% of those who are overseas are in default. 70% of the amounts overdue are overseas borrowers. We need to bring these people back into line. We need to have compulsory ability to get in touch with the people who are the ones who hold the addresses. These are not unfair and unreasonable demands at all. And although opposers might say that we are in a situation where we are trying to make it difficult for people to get an education, it is actually anything but, and they are missing the point. but there you go. That's what happens in a democracy. We are prepared to listen to their viewpoints, but we are determined to proceed on the track of making the student loan amendment scheme go through in the way that it has. The changes that have been made are full and fair and not too difficult to follow, and so I rise happily to support the third reading of the student loan amendment bill.
I call the honourable member Chris Hipkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when Maggie Barry started speaking,